Hey guys, my name is Alisha and welcome to my channel. So I am starting a really fun vlog because we are trying to see if I am more like an Aries or more like a Pisces. So my birthday is on March 21st, actually recently just passed. I'm 1 year older, feeling great. But I am actually right on the cusp of an Aries and a Pisces. So I am technically an Aries because March 21st is the first day to be an Aries, but March 20th is the last day to be a Pisces. And sometimes when I really think about it, I try to look at if I am more like an Aries or more like a Pisces, or kind of what characteristics from each sign I actually have. And I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of put to test the kind of books I like, whether I'm more of a Aries type of reader or more of a Pisces type of reader. And so this kind of video I've seen a lot. Definitely Books and Lala, Kayla is the queen. She's also an Aries, so I really like her video, and I thought I would do kind of something similar, but with my own spin. So again, like seeing that I am on the cusp, I basically searched the internet to try to find books that were recommended for Aries and books that were recommended for Pisces. And I narrowed it down to 4 books, 2 for Pisces, 2 for Aries, and I'm gonna kind of pit them against each other to see if I am more like an Aries or more like a Pisces.
First and foremost, the Aries are a fire sign, and they are known by their symbol of the ram. Their color is red, and I think that tells you a lot about them. One thing I will say for y'all is it feels like a lot of your positives could also be your negatives. The emotional whiplash on that must be real intense, because you have things in your traits descriptions being like, really courageous and passionate. Passionate nature could also get you in a little bit of trouble with your temper, maybe a little moody. You're very confident folks, which is cool to see. Again, I think that really feeds into the competitive side of your best and worst there, because you think you've got this, and no, wait, you've got this.
Starting off the recommendations, of course, we have to start off with Aries, the first sign in the zodiac. So Aries are known for being amazing leaders, courageous, bold, maybe a little reckless, but they're also unafraid to go into the unknown and really be pioneers in the world. So when I was putting together this list, I immediately knew what book I wanted to pick for Aries, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. So I recently read Legendborn and absolutely adored it.
Aries. Book that I'm recommending for you guys is The Power.
Lastly, but certainly not least, is Pisces. And people with the sign Pisces are often depicted as dreamers, people who aren't afraid of, delving into the imaginary world, but they're also very selfless people who tend to be really focused on their inner journey. So for Pisces, I would definitely recommend The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Honestly, I recommend either Erin Morgenstern book, this one or The Night Circus. I just feel like Erin Morgenstern's writing is one that really would connect with Pisces because it's so imaginative and beautiful and flowery, and one that just really pulls you into other worlds.
So after a very long and grueling process, I did narrow it down to 4 books, like I said, and I kind of tried to pick books that I felt like I would be interested in anyways. So, it's not like one of the books or one of the signs have a disadvantage because, that kind of book I wouldn't like on its own. So yeah, all of these books are in like genres I like or had a really cool plot or something that I, again, on my own, feel like I would have liked. So the first book is an Aries pick, and that is The Power by Naomi Alderman. So this is a book that was recommended for Aries, and I think it was definitely recommended because of the type of book that it is and like the plot of the book. Basically, this is in a kind of science fiction-y futuristic world where women have developed this sort of gene kind of adaptation where they are able to kind of electrocute people. And so only women have this, and it's basically looking at what would happen if women use this newfound power to kind of take over the world, or like how they would react to having this power. And it's kind of looking at society and women's place in society, and obviously like gender issues and women's rights issues, but it's also a fast-paced science fiction kind of adventure-y book. Aries are very much these adventurous people. They are very bold, very passionate, very driven. And so a lot of the characteristics that I think Aries are known for is what this book is known for. So I'm definitely really excited to read this and to see whether it is actually good for an Aries or not. And like I said, it is science fiction, and I'm definitely a pretty big science fiction fan. I have also been recently trying to read more science fiction, and I recently have read a book that has been compared to The Power, so I anyways did want to check this out to see if I actually liked it. So yeah, this is the first Aries pick. For the second Aries pick, we have Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. And this is a bit of an older book. I think it came out in like 2018 or 2019. And it is basically following a young Black woman who is a babysitter for this sort of rich white family. And so one day her employer calls her up and they're like, something has happened to their home, so they want this girl to come and take their little toddler kind of out of the house and out of the way for just an hour or something. And our main character is kind of at this party, so she's really dressed up, not really looking like how she normally looks when she goes babysitting, but she kind of agrees, and so she shows up, she takes the toddler, and her friend take the toddler to a local kind of grocery store, sort of like a Whole Foods type thing, and they go there, and they're just hanging out, babysitting the kid, when the security guard comes up to her and kind of accuses her of kidnapping this kid. It is kind of a pretty emotional occurrence. Also a character who is at the grocery store and he ends up video recording everything that happened. And then we have another main character who is the mother of the child. So there are these three main characters, and that's kind of the event that starts the story off. But we're really looking at sort of the life, I guess, of the main character. And this book is supposedly dealing with kind of like woke culture and racism and a lot of issues that are prevalent in society today. And I think that this book is recommended for Aries because of its like topic. I think, again, Aries are known to be very passionate, very kind of outspoken, maybe very opinionated sometimes. They also tend to have a bit of a temper and can get mood swings and things like that. Basically, Aries kind of tend to have like short fuses, and I can definitely relate to that. But yeah, I think that this book is kind of seeing how this situation and how certain characters deal with it and kind of where it comes from and how society views Black people, how society views allies to Black people, and kind of what allies look like and what they maybe should look like, what they should and shouldn't do. So that is our second Aries pick. So next up, we have our two Pisces picks. The first one being I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. So this is a very short book. It might even be like a novella, but it is a horror book. And initially, I was quite skeptical, I guess, of having a horror book as a Pisces pick, because Pisces are known to be kind of these like whimsical people, kind of head in the clouds, dreamers, and sort of emotional people, kind of mellow people, sensitive people. So I just didn't really see horror thriller kind of fitting into being a Pisces. But what I've seen and read about this book is that it is following two characters. One character is thinking of ending her relationship with the other character. And so they end up going on this road trip to meet the guy's parents, even though the girl is not really sure if she wants this relationship to continue. And so we're really following these two characters, and I guess their like emotional journey as our main character decides whether she wants to end things or not. But things take a turn, as they normally do in thriller and horror books, and things might not be as they seem. And so we, again, are following these two characters as they, I guess, are going on this road trip and seeing what happens. And this is our first Pisces pick. And then lastly, I have the second Pisces pick, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So this is a book that I have been wanting to read for a very, very long time. I think this is like one of the most liked books in booktube, bookstagram, the book community. But it's also a book that a lot of people say, you know, you have to be a specific type of reader to truly enjoy it. And I have heard that it's very much like character-based and focused on the characters and emotions, and it's like a very emotional, I guess, heartwarming read. And so I think this is a really great Pisces pick. I think, again, based on what I've seen, this has characters that, like, we're just following the emotional journey of characters, and there is a romance involved, and it is like sort of this fantastical fairy tale, whimsical storytelling style. And so, yeah, I think all of that fits really well into what a Pisces is. Basically, this is a story about two magicians who are bound to each other and kind of forced to compete in this competition, this like magical competition, but they don't really know anything about the competition, how it's going to look, what it's going to be, or even who their competition is. But from a very young age, they get roped into doing this, and so we're, I guess, following them as they train to go into this competition. and there is this night circus that is like this very fantastical circus, and it only comes out in the night, and it kind of travels around the world. It's this very whimsical story about just two characters, their lives, and them falling in love. So yeah, I think that's perfect for Pisces, and I'm very excited to read this, and it is our second Pisces pick. Hey guys, so update, I had started The Power by Naomi Alderman, and this was the Aries book recommendation. And I mean, I feel like this makes sense as an Aries recommendation because I guess Aries are thought to be of like really courageous and brave and like go-getters and passionate and things like that, and I feel like that plays into the whole idea of power and power dynamics. And I mean, this book definitely is sort of about like women taking over the world, so I definitely see that. So we're basically following four characters, I think, 3 girls and 1 guy, and we are seeing the girls how they sort of are learning about their own powers and kind of what they're deciding to do with them. And then for the guy, we're following him as he sort of takes in this new society and the effects of it. So I mean, that's also really interesting, and I think each different character is really unique, and I think it's really interesting, especially with the girls, seeing how they are deciding to use this power. And you know, some of them are using them for good, like purely just to like help other women and things like that, and then some of them are using the powers to like get ahead and use it to like actually gain power in society. So yeah, I think that's really interesting, and like seeing how just the idea of how power can be corrupted. And like I always think it's interesting just in general, like in our society, seeing that like, you know, good people, when they get power, they can just turn bad because of the power, and because of the all of the power they have can really corrupt them and can turn them to do bad things with that power. Or, you know, will they choose to do good with the power they have? And so yeah, I think this book is really taking this idea and like really talking about patriarchy and misogyny and things like that, and how these women who now basically run society are getting what's deserved and like getting what's due. So I mean, I think this book is really raising some interesting topics and discussions, and has a lot of great themes, and I am about like 50% of the way through, so a lot has happened, and I'm definitely really enjoying it. I think it was a little slow to start, especially at the beginning. It was a little confusing and a little like all over the place, especially when we're getting introduced to like this world and what's been happening and all the characters. But now, I mean, I'm definitely really enjoying it and really interested to see where it's gonna go, and yeah, to see what's gonna happen to all these characters. Hey guys, so I finished The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I actually had a lot of thoughts on this book. And first, before I get into that, let me talk about if, you know, this is a good recommendation for an Aries. And I think it is. I think that, I mean, first off, whether, you know, you're whatever zodiac sign, I think this book is gonna raise a lot of questions and start a lot of discussions and, you know, put a lot of thoughts in your head. And as an Aries, I think that is a very important thing for us. I think for Aries, or at least for me specifically as an Aries, I definitely like to think a lot, and I like to have all of these thoughts running where I can focus in on, you know, a specific theme or a message. And honestly, that's one of my favorite parts about reading, is because, you know, books are this really subtle, not always, but they can be this really subtle way of making you think about something in a sort of way that maybe you weren't thinking about it before. And so it can just start a really interesting conversation. And so the conversation in my head that is started, I think, again, is just, given that this book is talking about power and about leadership and about taking over the world in a way, I think that very much is in line with Aries as a personality. Now, I'm not saying all Aries will do what the women in this book did, so, you know, we're not violent and we're not obsessive or dangerous per se. If you read this book, you know the women in this book are a certain type of way, but I do think it is a good recommendation for an Aries. So I'm gonna pull out my handy dandy notes because I was trying to write as I was reading what my thoughts were. So I'm going to start off by saying that I definitely think that this book is the larger message, and what it's trying to ask its readers is kind of like what can power be? Is it always bad? Can it be used for good? And this book really reminded me of like the age-old quote of how power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because I think this book definitely is showing a very narrow idea of what power can be. And I'm not saying whether it's like right or wrong, I'm just saying it's a specific idea of what power is. And without giving anything away, I definitely think this book is saying that power is bad, and no matter who comes into power, it is going to corrupt and it is going to cause people to not do great things with it. And so I think that was an interesting take, and I'll get more into whether I actually like that take or not in a second. So starting out with some like pros of the book, pros as in like good thing, not pros as in the writing. Although speaking about the writing, I do think the writing was very nicely done. And I also really enjoyed how in between chapters and things, we basically would get these museum, like when you go to a museum and you like pick up the little like phone, or like zoos and things, like you can pick up the little phone and it'll give you like information about the painting or the animal or whatever. So that's basically what was in this book. So I actually would recommend listening to the audiobook because it actually sounded like you were like at a museum. So I thought that was really cool. Another thing I really enjoyed was basically this kind of global aspect of the book. I did appreciate that we weren't only seeing all of this go down in just one country or just like the Western world. We definitely basically got to see everything happen on a global scale. So we saw characters who were in Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So there was like a lot of representation of all of those countries and how they reacted to the situation. Another thing I really liked was all of the different characters and kind of what each character represented, because I think by having all of these different characters, the author was really able to basically look at a lot of different types of power, and I thought that was really interesting because basically I feel like she was talking about political power, religious power, the power of like media and journalism and things like that, and sexual power, and how in this world women can use that power to subjugate and oppress men. And basically all of this I think was like very much, I don't know if you'd call it like satire or something, but it was very much just a representation of our society today in a patriarchal world, and the negatives and the downsides of that, and how men oppress women, how men control women and hurt women and rape women and things like that. But in this book, it turned it on its head and was like a matriarchy that was also very dangerous and very violent, and the women were doing basically the same things to men that men do in our current society. And so I thought that was really interesting because there were so many moments where I was like, that is exactly what's happening in our world today. And pretty sure that was done intentionally to really kind of hit on the head that, the patriarchy is not good. And the matriarchy is also not good, because I think like the main point of this book was basically to say, to say something about equality and how we can't have just women in power and we can't have just men in power. And like that plays into the whole idea of power corrupting, because no matter who's in power, it might not be used in a positive way. And so I think this book was very much talking about equality and about how men and women have to work together. It just did it in a very extreme way. I definitely think there's also conversations about human nature and whether I don't want to call it evil, but how, the inevitability of human nature and what we are at our core is maybe not good people, and obviously like power plays a part in that. But I think the author was trying to talk about like the state of human nature. But now going into some cons, because some parts of this book weren't great. So in terms of the actual like storytelling, I do think definitely towards the middle and like end, it definitely got a little messy and a little like convoluted because there were like so many characters in so many different countries and different situations, and so it did get a little convoluted and a little hard to keep track of what was going on, I guess, and like how all the stories intertwined, at least for me. And for me, at least, in the middle, things did get a little boring and I wasn't as invested. Things definitely picked up near the end and I did like the way that it ended. But yeah, in the middle, it was just a little boring, a little slow, and a little messy and confusing. And then another thing, like I think there are a lot of messages and a lot of important messages, but I again, like because of all the different types of power we're talking about and all the different characters, I think there might have been maybe too many messages and too much going on. So again, that could have also played a part in how the story was told, so like the convoluted storytelling. Now I'm going to get into a couple of points that I actually very much agree with, and basically when I finish a book, or even while I'm reading a book, I really love to like go and read reviews or watch reviews, as I'm sure many people do. That's why we're all on booktube. But I went on YouTube and I was just looking at reviews of this book, and there's a lot of like kind of on the two extremes. Some people really love the book and some people really hate the book, and so I tried to look at like both sides. I'm actually going to link down below there's two specific videos that I thought were really interesting, because one of them was like really negative towards the book, like they didn't like the book at all, and another one was a bit more positive and a bit more I guess like the messages. So I'll definitely link those below and watch them. But I really liked what Bow Ties and Books, the YouTube channel, I think their name is Jess, but what they said was that basically, and I definitely agree with this, as a con for the book, was that it was very much centered on this Western-centric feminism, and a lot of the book had basically the depiction of the Western world versus the Eastern world was not great. And like I said, Jess from Bow Ties and Books really digs into this concept, so definitely go watch their video. But basically, it's this idea that the Western world, when all these women are coming into power, they are very like organized and methodical and calculated in how they're coming to power and how they're taking over and how they are I guess oppressing men in a way. Like it's this like civilized way. And I mean, I think that's actually a really interesting discussion given the political climate right now. I think that in this book, that was not a great thing, because again, like the way the author is representing the Western world was in that very civilized way, and then the way she represented basically every Eastern country that we saw in the book, like in Asia and the Middle East and in Africa, it was this very like violent and chaotic way that women were using their power. You know, we had things being lit on fire, this really like violent mass upheaval. You know, the way they were treating men was really like barbaric, and so that's definitely something that I think could have been shown in a much better light and in a fairer light, because I mean, you're just playing into stereotypes of, you know, the East versus the West, and how a civilized group of people would act versus how an uncivilized group of people would act, and you're just continuing that stereotype. And then lastly, another thing that I really agreed with from that video was how this book takes a very, very narrow approach to this situation, because you're telling me that every woman in every country in the world is going to react to this situation the same way. I don't really buy it. Like, in this book at least, no woman, no country was shown in a way that was good, or that treated the men good, or that were trying to do better. It was just, you know, taking over and hurting the men and oppressing the men. So, not the greatest. But overall, so those were the pros, those were the cons. I think overall I am giving this book 3 stars, because I do think, again, there were some messages that were really interesting and really important and kind of opened my mind to some new things, but then there were some messages that were not great. But I think overall 3 stars sounds fair. And now I'm planning to start I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid, and this is a recommendation for Pisces. I am not really sure why. I was kind of unexpected to see this kind of thriller recommendation for Pisces, only because you know, what you think of when you think of Pisces is like emotional and empathetic and like these dreamer type people. So I'm not sure what kind of vibes to expect from this. I have heard that this is like a really atmospheric read, and it's really like fast-paced in a way as well, and it's also pretty short, so I am excited to read this. So there isn't really a synopsis on this book, but on the back it says, "You will be scared, but you won't know why." And there's like little quotes from other authors. So one person said, "It's an ingenuously twisted nightmare road trip through the fragile psyches of two young lovers. My kind of fun," and that's Charlie Kaufman. But what I remember from what this book is about, I'm pretty sure it has to do with two characters who were seeing each other and they have broken up, but they are now either forced to like go on a road trip or something, and they are now, I guess, dealing with their breakup and having to be around each other. But obviously it's a thriller and something bad is gonna happen. But I think this is like a very much a psychological thriller, and so I am expecting to see some kind of, or like very heavily, you know, driven by the characters and their personal sort of stuff. And so I can see why that may be like a Pisces recommendation, because I guess like Pisces are very much, I feel like Pisces are very much in tune with their emotions, and there's like just always a lot going in their head and stuff, and I guess like that's what might make them super emotional or super quick to anger and things like that. And so I feel like for me, like on the cusp here between Pisces and Aries, I think that side of being a Pisces is very relatable, because I do think that I definitely can get really emotional and like be in my head a lot. And so yeah, I don't know, I have no idea what this book is about or how this relates to being a Pisces, but we will find out. And I am starting this book, and I feel like it's really short, so I should be able to finish it in like a day maybe, but I will check in and let you know what I think at the end. Hi guys, so excuse the look, but I wanted to update because I finished I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and oh my god, this book was just so weird but also so interesting, and not at all what I expected. So I don't know if I mentioned what this book was about, and I actually noticed that basically like this on this paperback, there nowhere does it say like a synopsis, and I feel like maybe that was the point, because truly going into this book blind I think is the best way to go, because there's just so much that happens that like if you know beforehand going in, it's just not the same feeling. So I do actually like the fact that I didn't really know anything, but I will say my initial thought that like what this book was about based on the title, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, was that like maybe it had something to do with you know, suicide or depression or some kind of like mental health situation. And although it's not really about that, without giving away spoilers, it's about this young woman who has been dating this guy for kind of a short period of time, and she is thinking of ending things with her boyfriend. And so she's going on this road trip to meet his parents, and I mean, that feels like a very serious step to be taking in a relationship when you know you're going to be breaking up with them, but you know, to each their own. So she goes basically to this kind of remote farm where his parents live, and so we're really following these two characters on this road trip, and then as they go and meet his parents, and after that something's happened. And most of this book, I mean, especially at the start, I was kind of not bored, but just like a lot of it is about like these kind of philosophical discussions between the two characters and their like points of view on various different topics. And although there were some interesting conversations there, I wasn't necessarily super into like what all of that had to say until we get to the end and we like realize what this book is actually about. Then I was like, okay, like then all of that kind of makes sense. And I will say I also thought this was a thriller, and it's actually more of a horror, or at least I think it's classified as a horror. And I ended up listening to this right before bed in like the dark last night, and there were moments that were actually really, really creepy. And I will say I was listening to this on audio, and there is a moment near the end where the audiobook does this thing that was just hella creepy. So that being all said, I am gonna give this book 3 stars, I think. Maybe 3.5, but I think for sure the atmosphere and the kind of horror element and like the eeriness and the like not knowing what is happening makes this book what it is and makes this book really good. But I do think, like I said, for pretty much the first half of the book, it really does take a lot to get into it, and like I at least had to push myself through to get to the end. And like I did want to know like what was actually going on, but you don't even really wonder what's going on until you reach like past halfway through, because that's when things start feeling a bit off. Yeah, I don't know, I just think like if you're looking for a really easy, really quick, really fast read, this is definitely a good choice. And I think in terms of the horror element, it was also done really well. It just isn't my favorite book, and I don't really think I'd read it again. But I am interested in watching the movie, because there is a Netflix movie that is out already. So I totally forgot to check in and tell you that I started Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, and this was the Aries book recommendation. And I would say the reasoning of why this was picked for Aries, I feel like might be because we are following a young woman who is not really sure what she wants with her life and is kind of in this point in her life where she's just trying to figure things out. So I would say this book doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, have characters that are Aries, but I do think that the reason maybe that this is recommended as an Aries, or like for an Aries, is because of the story itself. And so this is a very like fast-paced, a lot going on type of story. And I think the premise of the story and the messages of the story are very much like, it's very revolutionary, it's very driven, it's very bold. It's trying to say, again, in my opinion, it's trying to say some things without directly, you know, shoving it in your face, which I do appreciate and I do like. So as for me as an Aries reading the story, I definitely, you know, was having a fun time along the ride. Now discussing why or if I actually liked the book. Basically what this is about is a young black woman who is a babysitter. And one night the people that she babysits for, they basically are like, can you come over and take the kid outside of the house, because there's been a bit of a accident. So somebody was like egging their house, and now the cops are coming, so they're like, can you just take the kid and, you know, go hang out with her for an hour so that she doesn't see the cops and like have to deal with that whole situation. And so Amira comes over, she takes the little toddler, and they go to a nearby supermarket. And this is actually like a really fancy kind of supermarket, like, I don't know, like Whole Foods type of thing. And so she goes there and is just kind of hanging out with the kid, and she also has another friend there. And again, because she was at a birthday party, she is, you know, pretty dressed up, you know, has her makeup on, looking good, all of that kind of stuff. And suddenly she gets stopped by the security guard, and they basically accuse her of kidnapping this child. And it's this whole situation, and they're kind of like threatening to call the cops, and a crowd has gathered, and it's becoming a whole situation and a pretty scary situation. And there's also a guy who is recording the whole thing, obviously in case anything happens. And basically the story starts from there, and now we're following Amira as well as another character who is the toddler's mother, Alex, and another character who was the guy who was recording the whole thing. And so we're basically following these 3 characters, and this event is kind of the starting point of the story. And so this ultimately ended up being it is like a contemporary fiction book, and it definitely felt there's just a lot of like drama in it, and like I feel like that's what made it really fast-paced. But I think ultimately what the book was talking about is throughout the actions of basically the two white characters, because our main character is a Black woman. So these two white characters are in their own ways pretending, maybe not pretending, but they're very like woke, and they're very, I guess, like, because they are trying very hard not to be racist, they kind of overcompensate, and they end up doing a lot of things which are not great, and kind of negatively affect our main character. And so yeah, I think this book is really trying to talk about, you know, this kind of woke culture and performative activism and things like that, and also just like, I think the idea of like this white savior complex. And so yeah, I think this whole book and all of these actions, I think what I did actually really enjoy is that I think there's like a lot of different messages here, and there's a lot of different layers here, and the author never really, again, like tries to shove it in our face that like, yes, I'm talking about woke culture, or I'm talking about fetishization of Black people or whatever, you know. She doesn't really ever spell out that this is the message that I want you to take out of this book. She just, through the actions of the characters and the story itself, I feel like she leaves it in our hands as the readers to decide what we're taking out of this. And I think that's also exemplified through the ending. It is kind of open-ended because the characters, the conclusion isn't really this clear-cut thing where like the characters have learned from their mistakes and have grown or something. And so in a way, there's not a lot of character development, but I do think, like, again, what I personally have taken away from this is that the author is trying to say that, you know, sometimes people don't necessarily learn from their mistakes, or at least they kind of live in their ignorance, and that's a fact of life. Like, some people are like that. And so the main character has to obviously deal with that situation, but that might not be the only time she's gonna have to deal with the situation, because, you know, people of color, Black people, they deal with racism constantly, and they deal with microaggressions and all of these things. So, you know, it's not something that, oh, this big event is gonna change the trajectory of her life and completely change her as a person. Like, this could just be another thing that she deals with along the road. Like, and I mean it's very unfortunate, but it's true that, like, you're not gonna have, as a person of color, you're not gonna only deal with one incident of racism, you know. So for me, at least, I thought that ending was a good ending in the way that, like, it did, again, leave you to make your own interpretations of what the story was trying to say. All that to say, I am giving this book 4 stars, I think. I did really enjoy it, and again, like, it was so quick, so easy to read, and I think you know, this Aries pick is a good pick. I think for an Aries, and for somebody who likes fast-paced action stuff happening, characters who are really complex and interesting, this book has all of that. So I would highly recommend this for an Aries.
Random House Audio presents The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Read for you by Jim Dale. Anticipation. The circus arrives without warning. No announcements preceded. No paper notices on downtown posts and billboards. No mention or advertisements in local newspapers. It is simply there, when yesterday it was not.
Hey guys, so update here. I am on my last book, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and I'm 75% of the way through. And I have to say, this might be my most controversial opinion yet, because I just truly don't like this book. And I'm so sad by it, because I really wanted to, and I feel like this book had all the makings of a book that I would really enjoy, but just so many things have kind of fallen flat for me. I'm not really connecting with the atmosphere and the writing and the characters in the way that I was expecting to, or that I wanted to. And I feel like, I don't know, this book is just a pretty big letdown, unfortunately. But basically, I don't know if I said what this was about, but it is 2 magicians who, when they were basically children, were picked to compete against each other in this very kind of mysterious competition. So the 2 magicians grow up kind of getting trained to compete but they don't really know anything about this competition or how it's going to work or even who they are competing against. And so the kind of venue of their competition ends up being the night circus, which is also this very mysterious circus that goes around the world and only comes out in the night. And so, kind of unbeknownst to them, this is the actual venue of their competition. And so we're really just following these two characters, these two magicians, as they train and kind of get ready for this competition, but then also meet each other and kind of realize this situation they're in. And there are also kind of multiple timelines, which was a little confusing, especially because I am reading this as an audiobook, and so just kind of jumping through different timelines and different characters and stuff was a little confusing. But yeah, so all of that. And so starting off with the good things, I think the writing in this book is definitely amazing, and as everyone says, it's very lyrical and descriptive and just beautiful, and it really does put you into the atmosphere and the story, and it's kind of like a fairy tale where it is like really immersive and atmospheric. We also have, like I said, all of these different characters, and I feel like that's something that isn't really working for me. So like I was saying, the two main characters are these two magicians, and I think first of all, like their story and this whole situation they're kind of in is really interesting, and that's definitely the story and the characters I really care about. Sorry if you can hear that banging, there's construction going on outside. But yeah, those are the two characters I do really care about, and I want to know what's happening with them. But like I said, there are a few other characters that are also present in like different timelines and things like that. And unfortunately, I feel like I just don't really care about those characters. And so whenever we get their perspective, I guess, it kind of just taking me out of the story, because I just want to get back to the kind of main storyline. This is a very kind of slow story, and it's very much character driven and about the characters and kind of the atmosphere. And I don't know if this just makes me like I'm kind of thinking to myself, am I really a character driven reader? Because I always feel like I was. Like I do really like stories where the characters are at the forefront, but I feel like in a book like this, like just because it is so focused on the characters and what's going on with them. And I mean, there is obviously a plot with the whole competition thing, but that whole plot is just moving really, really slow. And for me though, I feel like, again, like I do like reading about the characters, but I feel like I need to have a solid plot that is driving the story to like keep me engaged. And then looking back on, Aries versus Pisces, this is of course the Pisces pick, and I actually really do get that, because I think because of all this, I have noticed that I think I am more of an Aries in the sense of like the books that I pick, because as an Aries, you care more about like action and adventure and, passion and bold stories and like stuff happening. And as a Pisces, you care more, I guess, about like the emotions and the characters and the little moments. And so this book is definitely like very focused on the characters and the emotions that these characters are feeling, and like the little moments that or like the little interactions that the characters have with each other. So I think that's really cool, and I do think that this is a great Pisces pick, but it's just not my favorite pick. So we're at the end of this little experiment. I have finished reading all the books, and now I wanted to kind of go over them again and see where they stand up against each other, and if I read more like an Aries or more like a Pisces. I have sort of just broken this down by star ratings, and now we'll see which sign I give higher stars to. But before that, let me just go over the books again and what I thought about them. First up, we had The Power by Naomi Alderman, and this I gave 3 stars to. I definitely thought this was a very interesting concept, and it was like really fast paced and like definitely lots of action, a lot going on, a lot of characters, and yeah, I really loved some of the topics and discussions in this book, but my problems with the book were basically that it was a little too convoluted, and it also took a really kind of narrow approach to the situation. And obviously, this author's opinion, or like what she was trying to get out of writing this book, and I did see what she was trying to do. I just thought it was really like a little unrealistic to go in the direction that she went to. and it just kind of made it seem like she had her agenda and wasn't really open to what else could be possible in this world that she created. So for that reason, yeah, I definitely gave it 3 stars, and it was a good book. It was interesting, but it wasn't a standout, I guess. Then for the Pisces book, I had I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This was a very short horror book, and it actually was a really interesting time, and it was a bit slower paced, and it definitely took a little while for things to get going, but once they did, especially towards the end of this book, it was just really fast-paced, really fun, a lot going on, and it definitely was like scary at parts, and I think the atmosphere was just really spot on. It was really kind of eerie and unsettling, and like for the first half of the book, you didn't really know what was going on or if something was wrong even, but then when we started getting little hints of the kind of weirdness that this book had, after that things were, yeah, like definitely really creepy because you knew something was wrong. So I definitely loved that element, but overall with this book, I think because of how slow it was, and because when things started happening, it was near the end of the book, and because the book was so slow, you really, at least for me, I really had to push myself through getting through like the first 60-70% to kind of get to the end where things sort of happened. So for that reason, I gave this 2.5 stars, and it was, I don't want to say it was a bad book, but it just wasn't something that I feel like I will ever read again or care about. Like I'm not, after reading it, it's been a few days, I don't really think about it or care about it. So yeah, 2.5 for this one. Then for my last Aries pick, it was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This was a bit of a surprise, I think. I wasn't necessarily expecting a lot in this book, but I ended up giving it 4 stars. And I think just because it was really fun and drama filled, and because of sort of the summary, I guess, of this book, I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be more of like a drama, but you know, it was, I guess, marketed as being, you know, a book about racism and a young Black woman dealing with the realities of society, I guess. But I mean, it was that, but it was also a lot more, and obviously it's fiction, and a lot of the things in this book were, I guess, a little over the top or dramatized, but I think that's what made this book really fun. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars, and it was the highest rated book in this little experiment, so I guess that tells you something, but this was definitely a big surprise, and I really did like this one. Lastly, my last Pisces pick was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and this one was probably the most disappointing and definitely one of the most disappointing reads of this year so far. I just had so many expectations, I think, and because this book is so highly rated and people love it so much, I was a little, it's just unfortunate that I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I think that this book was just a little too slow for me, and it's definitely made me kind of reevaluate whether I am more of a character-driven reader or a plot-driven reader, and I guess I've sort of come to the conclusion that I need a bit of both. I definitely like books that are focused on characters and their interactions and their relationships and their inner thoughts and feelings and emotions and all of that, but I do need a plot to kind of push the story and to have that kind of action and adventure. So it's really hard for me to give like my decision for this rating because I've been going back and forth. I feel like it's between a 2 and a 3, but I am going to give it 3 stars just because of the writing and the atmosphere. I think obviously the writing is gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, lyrical, very descriptive, and the atmosphere, like this is very much like a fairy tale story and also has an omniscient narrator. So I feel like that was pretty unique and gave the overall story a, I guess, different atmosphere that just made it fun to read. But yeah, definitely a little too slow for my personal liking. So those are my opinions, I guess, on those 4 books. And looking at that, Aries got 7 stars and Pisces got 5.5. So clearly I am more of an Aries reader. Obviously it's a very small sample size and everything, but I just think I'm not super surprised by that. I think I definitely, in my reading tastes, like more fast-paced, more action, more adventure in my stories, and I definitely am interested in the characters and their stories and focusing on them in stories, but like I said with the Night Circus, I definitely want more, like, I definitely want a plot that is driving the story and that, I don't know, creates like high stakes and a fun atmosphere and things like that. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, this was really fun and I found out a lot, and Aries all the way, I guess. No, I definitely still have like personality stuff and like characteristics of a Pisces. So I do, like, I think this was fun just to see the differences and the similarities, and for me personally, just in terms of like Aries and Pisces and how they're so close in the zodiac cycle or whatever. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I hope you guys liked this video. I will see you next time.